broadcasted? Looks like it.
Yeah, I think
so
we are now.
We're waiting for a few more people, but I think it's an interesting conversation to start, just to see how all of your lives have changed. We started a little bit, and Amandine, you were saying that not much has changed, and kind of the change happened before all of this. That was similar to mine. So tell us more.
Sure. So earlier this year, I was working on a full-time role while building my startup on the side, and things didn't work out with this role. So I ended up working full-time on my startup earlier than expected. But in the same time, my co-founder and I were planning on working really on it, like building the core product. And so it was part of the plan to be just focusing on it and like in a bubble anyway, but it just happened for me earlier than expected. And I've been working a lot with accelerator programs and co-working spaces, but because of the situation, well, I am definitely full-time on my startup, and I have the bandwidth to do a bit more, but it's hard to just add anything else outside. I mean, everyone is just trying to figure out how they're going to bring their program or whatever online and bring value to their startups. So everyone is busy enough not to deal with any external consultant coming in.
So for you, even though you had the plan of starting the startup, it's really the opportunity of time, of uninterrupted time that you got to spend on your plans now.
Yes, but I was already working on it before, so it's not like the lockdown situation gave me more time. It's more like finishing a full-time role and not having anything or not being able to start something else straight away. Gave me more time and kind of forces me also to start thinking about the big question for the business and planning ahead a bit more. Even if right now everyone is panicking, I am actually taking the time to just think about where we want to go, how we're going to do it, and plan a bit more ahead.
Good. David, you said a little bit that if it's snuck in on your calendar, you show up, and I said that's really my lifestyle too. How else has all of this affected you? Like, how are you doing personally?
Well, I guess personally, my wife and I, we own some small businesses here in Los Angeles, and they're film studios. So the film studio business, or film business, has been shut down. We're seeing a little bit of, pain, but, we have a little bit of padding to take care of that. That's on a personal level. Also, haven't had a haircut in a while, so that also doesn't help. Bahar, your hair looks amazing. So
thanks. I gave myself a haircut.
Otherwise, kind of on the investment side, I'm taking this call in between two other calls. So really excited about what's happening in the startup space. Still super excited about supporting startups from the early stages. I understand that certain investors are kind of doing some crisis management with established portfolio companies at this point, and it just really depends on what stages you're working in. And from the financial standpoint, we're still pretty active in writing checks and closing deals at this point.
So I'll just ask a one-word question. If you can throw the biggest industry with lots of opportunities right now, what's the one industry that you would name? And we'll come back to that to discuss more deeply.
Sterilization. Yeah.
Good one. We'll come back to that one. Hold on. So Alex is my co-founder for Case One.
Hey guys.
Business, so we'll let him introduce himself since he's late.
I'm not late. I'm right on time. You can't be late on Zoom. So hey guys, my name is Alex, and currently I'm staying and living in Russia, in Moscow. Yeah, we have a company, and we do some stuff, some like solutions for legal tech, for lawyers, for legal departments, for different corporates. And I guess Russia was one of the last countries who started like shutting borders and doing all these things like isolation and social distancing. But now, like that's the whole city, like the whole Moscow is so empty and the air is so clean. I guess this is one of the best like days in the whole city history. So now, we're actually doing great. We switched the whole team for remote work. We have for about 300 employees, and we switched for remote works in a couple of days. And on the day 3 and the 4, we start thinking about how to support our corporate culture, because when we stay in the office, we have this ability to talk with anyone, to touch with all these interactions, like real interactions. And now we lost all these things. And every day we launch different challenges. Like today we launched a challenge. It was a grateful day. Like everyone said some thank you for their teammates about something, and we keep doing that the whole day. That's really interesting, And we from my perspective, from my position, I'm the CEO and I'm the founder of the company. I'm start seriously thinking about how we will return to the office. Do we need to return to the office? How we will change our offices and our culture? And I'm start seriously thinking about doing this free desk initiative when only 2 employees have 1 desk, something like that. We start thinking about is it able to replace let's say our sales director with technologists, with robots, and seems like it's possible. And this crisis and the whole situation actually give us a huge kick in the ass, to start thinking in a different ways. I'm really excited about that. That's interesting, that's really cool.
So that keeping of corporate culture is really important, because we are in the business of automation and online platforms ourselves, and even when you are there's still this kind of unsureness, because you have to rely on your team to love it and advocate for it just as much. So growing the corporate culture in a remote way is definitely going to be interesting, because already we see a huge change in even the work ethic, the attitude of the employees. They seem happier, which is a big thing we advocate for. And Alex is doing polls and holding meetings almost daily to just ask from different departments, how have they adjusted? Would they want to go back? What do they see in their future? And it seems like our people really like the idea of being free and working from anywhere. But we can talk about that more deeply. I'm really curious of how this has affected Harrison. He is a law student, a founder, and his business is in the healthcare industry. So I think it's interesting to hear how this has affected you. Are you sad that you're going to miss Barrister's Ball or anything like that?
I was lucky to have already attended Barrister's Ball earlier in the semester. So it's one casualty that we don't have to worry about. But yeah, I'm a UCLA law student, first year, and we went to pass-fail, mandatory for the semester, which is a big change. And I moved back to Pennsylvania for the rest of the semester from Los Angeles, which is where I am calling you from now. But it's from Lower Merion.
I have a friend, and I was there earlier, in Tamaqua.
I don't know them, but they were in Lower Merion earlier?
It's in the woods. I don't exactly know where that is.
It's a woody area.
Yeah.
But it's actually, for as far as my startup goes, we're developing a new birth control method. And we were already a remote team because my co-founders are in New York and other parts of Pennsylvania while I was in California just recently. So we were used to working remotely while we develop our product. And because we're in that early stage of product development as well, the disruption has been minimal. In fact, in terms of applying for different grant opportunities and angel opportunities, I found people have more time to connect. So the work has actually been picking up a little bit in pursuing those grant opportunities.
That's a really good point. Remember to talk about this later, of what's the best method and time to really approach and reach out to people, because I think there's such a great opportunity right now. I think you missed it earlier. We're having this conversation with one of our panelists that I stalked until he agreed to be on, and he was talking about my persistence is what got David here. So really making it onto somebody's calendar at this point through persistence is huge. It's huge. A lot of people are available. Nicole and I went to the same school but didn't know each other. We talked a little bit yesterday in preparation for this. So Nicole, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how this has all affected you and your business, especially your company, because it's in a definitely an interesting area that I'm assuming was really affected by this.
So I'm Nicole Duncan. Nice to meet you all. And I'm a founder of Curb Stand. So the pandemic had a large effect on our business because they shut down all of the restaurants. So we provide parking services for restaurants, clubs, events. So it had a major impact on our business when they issued the shutdowns of all of the restaurants and only takeout. So obviously, we also do airports, so no one's traveling, and we do large events. For example, Coachella, that was canceled. So we had to let go most of our employees and are in the process of applying for the SBA payroll protection plans to cover their payroll. And it's not clear whether the restaurants will reopen or what the environment will look like in that industry after this is over.
That small business loan is interesting that they're doing. I know there's a lot of problems with it when we looked into it. We can talk about more who qualifies and some of these unfair restrictions that they've put if people are interested, but that's an interesting program to kind of help people pretty much stay alive until everything is back to normal in the certain industries.
Yeah, and it's very new, so I think it's frustrating for a lot of businesses because there's a huge demand, and I don't think the banks are prepared to review all of the applications in a timely manner. So I think it's frustrating a lot of business owners also.
From the other side, I know there was a problem with Bank of America that when they took this money without any condition, they decided to prioritize only their account holders, not just their business account holders, but you have to have had a business credit card with them and debt for them to consider you for this loan. And I'm not sure if it's to pay their own debt back first before who knows? It's a mess, but at least there's some benefits that they are providing.
I think it's primarily to avoid fraud because they have an established relationship with their customers and they don't want to get in a situation where they're giving out loans to a lot of fraudulent applications. Yeah. So that's one reason.
Yeah. So Dorna, I've read about you, have never talked to you. I know you're a recovering lawyer just like me. You quit to become a legal tech startup founder. So we'll talk about that. Tell us a little bit about that and really just how's everything going?
Yeah, definitely. So we basically, what we do in short is we allow lawyers to build all kinds of legal applications on our platform without using any kind of code. So it's a kind of new form of service delivery. Our automation platform is used internally, but also externally to collaborate with clients and generate revenue and create external facing tools. Our clients are all over the board in terms of legal. And so we've sort of seen what's going on with the economy through our own client base, because there are those lawyers who are having it really tough right now, like basically any kind of deal lawyer, their business is completely shut down. There's no deals. I always call people if they cancel our software, and I called a few people last week and they were like, the person who signed up for the software in the first place, it doesn't work here anymore because they were laid off. So there's pretty huge impacts for a lot of lawyers across the board. At the same time, there are other areas which have seen either an increased amount of business throughout this, like employment lawyers, bankruptcy lawyers, or they have enough resources to be able to keep moving during this time and thinking of new ways to generate revenue. So we've sort of been just kind of on the phone a lot with clients and figuring out what the best way for us to support them is.
That's an interesting point, because there's really never any death in anything, right? It's just redistribution with a new skill set. So legal in general has been one of the most traditional industries ever. So legal is going to suffer a lot just because of that. On top of that, you have practice areas that are dying out. So if there needs to be any new innovation and open thinking and thought process, that this is really an opportunity. It's in legal, but it's really in anyone with any innovative idea to do something new. Like for us, when we're also in legal technology, and it's interesting that we went this way, because I'm going to go back now through all of the lawyers and everyone in legal tech. We've had to go through that, having been, new IT founders and kind of considered disruptors of having to do something new. But the world is different now. The world is different today. So what would have been considered disruptive like maybe 30 days ago, it's not even the same now. So everyone is almost on the same playing level. And if you ever have had an idea and to say, you know what I just thought of, like it'd be really cool if we had this, like that's where all of the new small dreams and ideas start from. Like, I wish I had this to do something. Like you have to just make the wishes first, and then figure out if it's possible and to do it. So you went through that in legal. Tell me a little bit about the difference in your experience, and for right now, out of what you observed in your client base of these changes, like what size are these law firms, or what practice areas, or something similar that you see?
Yeah, so most of our clients are smaller or mid-sized law firms. And that's exactly the transition that we went through. You have this idea of something you want to build, and we're hoping to kind of make it easy for them to do that. The most difficult part of that process is finding people, engineers who can help you with that. And I actually heard a stat, and I don't know how true this is, so don't quote me, but in the last recession, apparently like LLC applications went up like 100% because there were so many people who had been laid off. But then when you're laid off, you think about, okay, what else can I do? I'm going to start a business. All these dreams that you're talking about, it can be a moment of opportunity for when we finally come out of it.
So I know you were with Sidley Austin, which is the Obama's firm, so it's one of the most known firms in the country.
Obama and Michelle met, actually.
Yeah, I heard the story in the book. That's how I know about this firm. So, of course, there are older law firms, and I don't want to get into too much specifics about the story, but is that where a little bit of your inspiration came from, just being in that traditional environment and wanting to help yourself?
It's exactly, well, so it's funny because I was doing some pro bono work while I was at my firm, and so it wasn't my main area of practice, and that was what spurred me to go down this direction. I was doing work with domestic violence survivors and wanted to build almost like a TurboTax for domestic violence law, and originally built out the content, and realized that the better way for us to do it was just to build a platform rather than me researching all the law and having my engineer, build it out for 3 months for every content-based tool. So now we're more of a software company.
It's a good transition. And then you realize, I don't know if it's such a huge improvement on the quality of life, but it's definitely a different lifestyle and a different way of thinking when you're in technology versus law. It's helpful to have this legal training, because you look at everything from a problem solving perspective and you can solve everything, but technology really just gives you this open-minded, unlimited thinking to understand whatever you think about can somehow come to life. It's just a matter of resources, and that's where David's money comes in, of how much resources do you have to make what. I
have a good question for you guys, actually. That's an interesting conversation, because I mean, even with when you speak of passions and you speak of business, that's an interesting. I like the LLC application stat. That's a really good one. I might look into that one. But one big company in your area, Atrium, just shut down, right? And that was a really big, well-resourced company with $75 million that they just handed back to investors. Now, I'm really curious, I mean, since you guys were on the ground in terms of, hands-on experience, what your perception of that company was, and how does that really play into your ecosystem?
I'm going to give a short opinion, and I think this is best question for Alex. Atrium was a legal service provider. So they were kind of doing outsourcing of legal services versus just technology. They were a technology company. I never really saw the inside. I was always curious to see what the platform side of it is, but it's hard to know. Maybe it was bad spending and bad decisions, because it's legal industry is projected to be over 2 or 3 trillion.
What do you mean? Like the globally?
The size,
Global?
yeah.
1 trillion.
1 trillion.
You know,
and it's less than 25% penetrated in terms of technology. So it's a huge industry. I'm not sure. Something like Atrium is definitely necessary for legal services. I think it would be more successful in a B2C industry versus a B2B. That's what they were doing in terms of legal services. But Alex, like, what's your opinion? We've talked about Atrium a lot.
You know, I think the problem is, I guess, you know, they didn't find a good like financial model. So I think the unit economy they had, it was like completely unprofitable. So I guess that's the problem. So they were thinking, they assumed that they will use technologies and they will replace some processes and functions from real lawyers through technologies. This is something what we have and what we do with Bahar in our robotic law firm. But, you know, we do this stuff. So we took like only immigration law, and from immigration law, we replaced for about like 90% of manual work, we replaced with technologies. And we have this kind of technologies, you know. I guess Atrium didn't have the same advanced, the same kind of thing, you know. That's why that was impossible for them. And I was reading the huge article about like the Atrium, and it says they tried to switch, they tried to pivot for a new model, and they tried to start selling the platform as a legal tech, as a case management or like matter management system for our companies. But, you know, we have so many different competitors and there's so many different players in this area. And the whole area for case management is more complicated than just simple project management. It's not just a project management. So I guess that's the main problem. You know, they took like a different, they had a different approach. They had a different concept for this stuff, I guess.
Yeah. And we have this little robotic law firm, and now immigration, of course, how it's affected us. Immigration is one of the areas that died right now. So for us, there's no choice to quit. We always adapt. That's what you do. You adapt. So a different practice area that we're launching right now in the next week or so is estate planning, because this is something that's helpful for everyone. You need it from home. You can't go to a lawyer's office. Those lawyers will be affected who are not reachable online. But if you're quarantined and God forbid there's disease all around you, wouldn't you want to plan, especially if you have a small child? So these are the type of services that are right to automate for a B2C market. But the mistake that I personally made, and we made in our business the last 2 years, that I would recommend not anyone making, is to focus and choose one thing, like create MVPs. And I think that's something else that the Atrium was lacking. They were doing all sorts of area of corporate law. That's a lot. That's almost everything that's crossed over in consumer too under the area of corporate law. And it increases expenses and it decreases your quality of what you've automated.
But the only one thing, you know, David, I fully agree with you. Like Atrium, they had a lot of investments, like 75 millions. That's a lot. And I hope they just return some of that investments to their funds. You know, I hope so, because like I don't understand how it's possible to burn like 75 millions on this.
I was doing a quick analysis of the last few years of companies that were really well funded, because we talked about resources, but really well funded but shut down. And it's really funny that the top companies that were really well funded, the reason they actually shut down wasn't the resources, it was law issues. So it was fraud. They had to do with fraud and a corporate law, you know, issue. So that's your world. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are becoming very well funded, but they're doing, you know, fraudulent things, especially in kind of insurance and healthcare space. So
yeah, there's going to be a lot of that popping up. Unfortunately, when disasters happen, you have two groups: the ones who run in, who are trying to help, and the ones who are just trying to take advantage and make a buck. So, but let's see how everything comes out.
Hi, Lisa. I just joined.
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
I had a call before this.